Welcome to a new episode of Triggre Weekend Masterclass, and today I am going to explain how you can use OAuth2 to connect to another system and use the tokens, which are a big part of OAuth, to send or retrieve data from the other application. I will do this by using an example application of ExactOnline, and first I'm going to explain you a little bit how OAuth works in general. Then I'm going to show you how that works in the designer, and finally I'm going to show you in the application itself how that would work. So OAuth2. How does OAuth2 work? Well, basically how it works is that you log into the application first by clicking on a specified URL. As soon as you've done that and you've logged into the application, that application will send a code back to your own application, your Triggre application, and your Triggre application will use that code to retrieve a token. Well, actually two tokens, an access token and a refresh token. The access token will be used to retrieve or send data to the application, but after, in this case, 10 minutes, it will expire and you will need to use the refresh token to retrieve a new access token. That's basically how it works. So, let me show you how this works in the designer. Like I said, I've made some preparations, when we look at the data model, I've added application settings, and we will store the access and refresh token over there, and we also store until when the token is valid, because as soon as it's not valid anymore, we need to retrieve a new token. Of course, I also store the data that we retrieve. So in this case, it's a response and a response detail, because that's, in this case, how the interface will work. So the data model is not that complicated. Then, if we go to the user flows, I've created two user flows. And in this case, I've created a how-to user flow and a login user flow. The login user flow is used to log into, in this case, ExactOnline, to authenticate yourself at ExactOnline. This URL is a specified URL, as ExactOnline tells me how to specify it. So the URL itself and some parameters like the client ID and where they need to post their code to which webhook. Well, besides that, I also created the user flow how-to, and the how-to user flow first of all shows the explanation I just gave, plus I can also click the button Get Division. Then we will check if we need to refresh the token and do so if it's necessary. And after that, we will retrieve the division which is linked to this account within ExactOnline. And of course, I'm going to show you the result of that retrieval. We're also going to use an automation flow and some flow parts. So let's start with the automation flow first. We have a webhook called ExactOnline in this case, and it will have an input with, and that has one parameter, which is code, which is a text. And we are going to use that code to retrieve the first token. And as soon as we have that first token, of course, we can use it to retrieve the access and refresh tokens. That's what you can see here. So this is the flow part that I just explained, which is in the automation flow. Retrieve first token. we see here is that we get the input with the code, and we use that code to send a message to, in this case, our OAuth2 provider, which is ExactOnline. And in the end, we add the tokens that we receive to the application settings. Okay. The other thing we do, what I explained, is that we have a button called Get Division. And as soon as we click it, we are going to check if the token needs to be refreshed. And if so, we'll do it. And after that, we will get the division. So let me explain you those two flow parts as well. We have the refresh token. And what we do here is we get the application settings and we check if the token is invalid. And when that's the case, we are going to retrieve a new token via the refresh token, which is an interface as well. We are going to check if we get a positive response, which is status code 200. We are going to determine a new valid until, and we're going to save those two new tokens, refresh token and access token, to the application settings again. After that, we can retrieve the division. That also uses the interface. With a token, we get a response, we get details of the response, and then we save the division itself or show it on a page. So that's like the general process and the general flow parts. Let me show you a little bit how those specific interfaces work, because it will help you, I think, implementing this functionality into your own applications. So like I said, at first we have the retrieve first token. So when we look at the interface itself, we need to go to a specific URL to post our code, and that will give us back the token that we would need. So we add the different properties, like a client ID, client secret, but also the code that we received from the authorization application just yet. And we create a new interface message, and that interface message will get a response back, which has an error description, a refresh token. This is one of the things that we're very interested in, and for instance also the access token. And we are going to save those two tokens in our application. But like I said, the token is valid for only 10 minutes. So after 10 minutes, we need to request a new access token. So we're going to take the current date and time plus 10 minutes to determine when these tokens will be invalidated. We're going to add them to the application settings where we say, okay, store the access token, which is in the response of the OAuth2 interface message, as you can see. And the same goes for the refresh token. And of course, the token valid until is the flow part or the action that we just created. When we look at the second flow part, we've got the refresh token. So like I said, we need to check if the token is invalid, and if the token has expired, we're going to retrieve a new token. That's a different function within the OAuth2 provider. So instead of using the code that we receive when a person logs in this case, we're going to use the refresh token. So of course, we've got the client ID and secret again. And in this case, we're going to get a refresh token. And we are going to use the refresh token that we saved in our application settings before. And as soon as we send that to our OAuth2 provider, we will receive a message back, which gives us back another new access token, a new refresh token, and maybe some error or error descriptions. And we are going to store, well, actually we're going to do exactly the same as what we did when we first got the access token. We're going to determine a new valid until, plus 10 minutes, and we're going to save these tokens to the application settings. Okay, so this is all regarding the tokens that we need to use, but then we would like to retrieve the division in this case. So we get the application settings, which contain the access and refresh tokens, and we have to create a message to, in this case, ExactOnline to retrieve the division. So as a bearer token, we use the access token because that will give us access to this particular interface. We need to define, we will receive a message back, a response back from this interface. And in this case, it's going to be a username, a current division, and the division customer name. And of course, we need to store that. We're going to do that, the response itself, and the details of the response, since in this case, the response uses an array, so it can transmit back multiple entries. So we have to use a repeat action for that. Get last received division, I use that to show you what division we've retrieved. And I will put that in the output so I can use it in my user flow. So let's see how this works in the actual application. So this is the actual application, and we start by clicking the link on the page, log into, in this case, ExactOnline, which is our OAuth2 provider. And we need to log in. So we're going to click this link. And what you see here is the login page for Exact. So I have to fill out my username and password. They post a message back and I say, thank you, you've been authenticated, you can now close this window. So at this point, we've received a code from our OAuth2 provider that we need to use to get an access code and a refresh code. Well, that's something that's already been done on the background. So the next step is to get the division, as you can see here. So I'm going to click the Get Division button. And there you go. We can see the date, time we've retrieved it, the username, and our current division number and the customer name. Did you think this was awesome? Do you want to be notified about new episodes? Like and subscribe to our channel.